Before the internet was cool, Drew Curtis founded Fark. It's a news site that doesn't take itself too seriously, as you can probably tell from their mascot of a very, let's say, manly squirrel.
Look at the size of that thing.
Drew and I talked about his building Fark. I mean, you kind of like started a Reddit subreddit.
Yes.
Before Reddit existed.
Yeah, actually, funny story about that.
The craziness of the media today, and that's usually what the news does, is make something small look a lot worse. And how algorithms are driving us all to drink.
Facebook just makes people mad and genocidal.
It was a fun conversation, and I hope you enjoyed it. It's just so much more fun to have a whiskey in front of us.
Yeah, definitely.
And all of that. I mean, you turned me, you know, I still drink. That's still one of my very top, like, 2 or 3 whiskeys in the world. Is the it's the double oak, but who
double oak? Yeah, that one's Thank God it's findable now. Woodford does that one. Yeah.
You know, there was a period of time where it was at Target.
Yeah. I know Woodford, man.
and I'm talking like, you know, not a fancy Target. Let's just and it wasn't the Woodford. It was the Woodford double oak.
Yeah, they started getting like super big. The next one to keep your eyes open for, by the way, is Wilderness Trail. That might be in California already. I know it's in a bunch of other states, but it's kind of off everybody's radar. That one's, I was asking a friend of mine who, believe it or not, is a bourbon sommelier, like what, because I always find these go-tos that are local that I drink all the time, and then everybody else finds out about them. Like, I used to drink Eagle Rare all the time. Like, that was my go-to, and now can't do it because it's gone.
Yeah, I mean, look, I still like Jack just because I grew up on it, and it's just kind of like drinking mother's milk or something.
Yeah.
But there's also I generally don't like Japanese whiskeys all that much because they're too peaty. They taste like scotch to me.
I have the opposite problem. They taste nondescript, but they're good.
Yeah, but most of them have that. I just don't like. I don't like scotch. Yeah. Weirdly, I love whiskey. Don't like scotch. It just tastes like you poured it over moss to me, right?
Yeah.
And I don't like that taste. I guess that's a popular thing.
Strangely, we have a ton of Japanese whiskey around here because there's a very high Japanese population here.
Right.
Which means we have good sushi too, which is kind of nice. But
why did Japanese come to Lexington?
Toyota. There's a massive Toyota plant in Georgetown, the next town over.
Right.
And, like when I was a kid, that town had maybe 5,000 or 10,000 people in it. Now it's like 150,000. I mean, it's a lot. But yeah, that bourbon to keep an eye out for is Wilderness Trail. If you can't get it already, that's one that's going to eventually be on everybody's radar. It's pretty good. It was founded by a guy. It's actually a funny story. The guy was an organic chemist, and his partner was a mechanical engineer. And they had for 10 years a startup company that just would extract yeast out of building materials. And they did this because a lot of these older distilleries have older facilities, and they were like, "Hey, can we get the yeast strain we used like 50 years ago? Can you guys find that?" And so that's how they started.
So you're drinking the DNA of building materials?
Yeah, they pull out the yeast and then they recycle it basically and bring it back. And so they've done that with a bunch of them. Because you can
make yeast last forever. Isn't that like some of those soups that guys do, and they're like, it's the same pot of soup that's been going on forever?
They just pull it out of the ceiling, but they did that for 10 years, and then I guess they just figured they learned enough about the bourbon industry to kind of start one from scratch. And I went on that tour last week for the first time, and it was fascinating because every other place is like, we've been doing this for 200 years, and these guys are like, yeah, we built it 5 years ago, and here's what we decided to change, and it was kind of neat.
So tell me about Fark. Fark is one of these cool sites that it was kind of ahead of the when it was first people having feedback. It was ahead of the technical curve.
Yeah.
Now you're way behind the technical curve. You're kind of not even in it. You're like it's like a push mower. Yeah. But it's still going strong, and I think you've kind of refined having an off-site or not in part of the regular ecosphere, social group. How are you keeping that going?
Yeah, I don't know, because like I will say what's improved recently probably is this, which is that the people that we've got, like there is a large contingent of folks that have been around for 15 or 20 years. And when they were younger, they were assholes. And now they're older assholes, and those are kind of the best assholes to have because they're very good at running off like the people that really suck. So they kind of do the job for us from a moderation perspective a little bit.
Right.
So I think that's
so they're not assholes, they're dicks.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, that's when you get older, you kind of mellow out a little bit. Now you're not doing it for no reason.
Okay.
Now you're doing it for specific reasons. And so I think part of it is that I don't have the issue of like a lot of sites that are sometime around like the 4 to 6 year range, you'll get enough people in your community where they start trying to stage a revolt. We're long past that now,
right?
But with so many people on the site that like honestly do care about the way that it's run,
Right.
that they kind of do our job for us and end up keeping it pretty clean. The other thing is that I think part of the reason why I never spent a lot of time trying to clean it up or even keep up with what everybody else was doing is that the difference creates a barrier of entry to morons. And I think that kind of works for us.
You know, every time I've seen in life where the barrier to entry is harder, you get a group who cares more about it. Like I go to Burning Man, right? It's a pain in the ass to get there. I mean,
totally.
You know, you got to bring it all in. You got to take it all out. You got 5 hours waiting in line to get in there. It's out in the middle of bumfuck nowhere. But once you're in, it's like, okay, that has a self-selecting group. And so is your age getting older on that? In other words, do the younger people not do that? Or is it, you know, who do you think you're keeping out by being old man-ishy?
Well, here's the weird thing. So first of all, like, I don't know that we come across like that other than like, in fact, what we've done is we've actually flipped over and gone retro by accident. Okay. As it turns out, I took a design class recently and I was asking what I had to change. And they're like, you might want to just keep it because that's a really unique style that people are starting to like because it's 20 years old now. And I was like,
right.
Yeah, okay, that works.
I mean, you kind of like started a Reddit subreddit.
Yes.
Before Reddit existed.
Yeah, actually, funny story about that. So today, I know you're going to drop this later, but today, or actually late yesterday, was the announcement that Reddit's going to IPO for like $15 billion. And what's really funny is that so I met Alexis Ohanian for the first time in 2008.
Right.
And I remember it was either 2008 or 2009 where he was describing to me the subreddit thing that they were going to do. And I was like, how the hell is that going to work out? And I mean, it was pretty clear that was going to get a lot of traffic. But my problem was how are you going to stop Nazis from showing up?
Right.
And they're like, oh, it'll be fine.
Right.
Okay. I guess that's why we never did it. Cause I was like, I don't think that's going to work out. Granted, you know, $15 billion paycheck for them, you know,
they might do okay. I mean, he was actually okay with, he was a pretty free speech guy. Yeah. I mean, when you read some of his quotes, unless he was full of crap, I'm not sure if he would have liked the cleanup direction that they're going right now. And I get the money thing and I get this.
But actually he does, but it has to do with, I can't speak for him. You'd have to look it up, but he said something. He resigned from the board over the fact that it wasn't going fast enough. And I think it has
I'm screwing up with him and somebody else on.
No, he was like that for a while, but then he married Serena Williams and had a kid, and the kid's black. And I think that changes your perspective a little bit, maybe.
Man, it might.
Yeah. I had my guess. I haven't talked to him about it.
But if I was married to Serena Williams, I'd do whatever the fuck she told me to do.
Yeah.
That's one of the toughest women on the planet.
I know. Yeah, no kidding. I wouldn't cross her ever. Forget it.
Say, all right, I'm making breakfast again. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, sure, fine. Whatever you want. Don't kill me.
You know, the funny thing about Reddit is as woke as they are, it's one of the pervertedest sites around. You know, you could still get your fill of pro rape kink shit going on out there, where people are giving each other advice on how to be a rape victim or how to be a rape perp. You got some crazy shit
all
there.
On there. I think it just goes to show you, like, man, I wish somebody give me $40 million. I bet I could do the same thing.
Maybe. You know what? They did a lot that was right. When they opened it up, and that, the subreddit concept was pretty brilliant. It was, you know, they allowed it to go there. And obviously when they tried to do we're merging it all into one big thing, they had to kill the Republicans because you can't have that in Silicon Valley.
That's apparently what's going on.
You know, that's a rough one from, but I'm not, I think that's still a huge vulnerability since they're not playing the fuck y'all, we're free speech and let's just do this. That if the wokesters really decide to go after them, that's a big part of, and it's a big part of their traffic. I'm convinced, because it's just, you know, I would love to put one of them on Truth Serum and say, what percentage of your traffic comes from porn?
Yeah.
Because I use Reddit for like e-bikes, a financial site, and porn.
Yeah.
It's like,
it's got everything.
It's pretty good on those. It's
one-stop shop there, I guess. Yeah.
Where's the shit going?
It's unclear right now. Nobody's really coming up with any good new ideas. It doesn't seem like I've got a couple, but my problem is like, they're not, there's way too much work there for me to be able to pull off by myself. So I keep on bugging people to, you know, see if they want to jump off into crazy land and try something completely different. But I'd have to say what I think is going to happen probably pretty soon is, somebody's eventually going to put together a conservative network, and then that's going to basically start the what I was referring to as a sharding, I guess, which is not sharding. That's your favorite subreddit. It's totally different. But what I mean by that is, like, I mean, all what usually happens on these platforms is that they usually start like fragmenting, basically, and splintering off. And that's kind of like what Reddit had happened with subreddits. Like, they were smart enough to realize, if we created alternate platforms, we could let these people, set up shop, and then that way we don't have to ban them. We can just put them over there till we, decide to get rid of Nazis 10 years later. But at any rate, so I don't see anybody really trying to do anything new. And part of the problem has to do with just the way the internet works, where, it's an attention economy. And that's really limiting in the strategies you might be able to employ. Because if you need people to look, and you can't make money if they don't, well, then you're kind of stuck with being real shouty. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, but I mean, look, platforms are still financially the easiest dollar per, cost metric going in, right? If you can build a platform and you have a trillion people coming in, or even 1 million people coming into it, you can do pretty well on that. I mean, the tricky part of, and I tried to pull this off and I couldn't. I mean, the tricky part of saying, all right, we're going to have an open, we're going to have an open speech platform is that you do get some really bad stuff.
Here come the Nazis. Yeah. Every damn time. Yeah.
And just, when you say Nazis, I kind of view the woke left as the Nazis as well in the generic.
And I actually mean the literal Nazis.
But they're like one to 1,000 from the people who are throwing bricks at people's heads these days. But, but all you have to do is wear a black shirt saying anti-fascist, and then that solves all of your thing. You're not a fascist at that point. But, do you have actual Nazis in I've never fucking met a Nazi in my life.
Okay. We've got white supremacists.
You got a couple?
Yeah, like we know there's a friend of a friend guy who teaches a Taekwondo thing, found out like years later. He's straight up like, not only he's like straight up owns being white supremacist, but he's like the whole deal. I'm like, okay, well. Yeah,
because I hear it all the time, but then every time I look at the definition, it's like, oh well, I guess that's me too. I didn't mean to be. I just meant to do my thing, but I'm not bowing down to and raising my fist at the right time, and that means I'm a white supremacist as well.
No, they're around. I mean, I see them more often in Kentucky than anywhere else, or at least as far as I know. I mean, they're more identifiable out here.
I remember when I was a kid, there was actually a real honest to God Nazi house. And now, when I say kid, I mean I was like 6 years old, and it was like some weird house with Nazi flags and stuff on it, and a big gate in front of it, and it was near the McDonald's. So my mom wouldn't take us to McDonald's often, but it was like our special treat type thing for kids. And I remember being like scared of that, and then it disappeared, and I haven't noticed another Nazi off of online, I guess since then.
So. Yeah, I've seen them around. They did the thing. I forget the name for it, but it's where you change the symbols and the words you use or whatever. Like, so I speaking of Reddit, I consulted for them occasionally, and they showed me one that was really interesting. It was ostensibly a subreddit on how to deal with mice in your house, but it turns out when they took a closer look, they were actually talking about Jews.
That's an interesting. If you looked at. And now I'm not talking America. I'm talking about the real rise of Nazism. They went strongly after kind of like cleanliness and real rodent things first. In other words, that was part of the Nazi regime when they were coming to power in the 30s was like hygiene and cleaning things up. And it was weird how they kind of then shifted from you got to get rid of those rodents to humans.
These bad people,
And it was kind of it wasn't like a next day progression, but it was a progression that included that, which I found very, very, very
one of the things I've noticed too, and I first caught a sight of this because somebody had explained to me what it was, but I think it was like, I don't know what the symbol is, but it's the I think it's for apartheid or something. It's like it's instead of the swastika, it's like a 3-pronged triangle of some kind. It doesn't look like a swastika. I think it was an apartheid symbol. Anyway, once in a blue moon, I'll see somebody wearing one of those. And granted, like nobody else knows what that means, but that's a pretty clear signal, So that's what I mean.
Or it's like something that surfers did. I mean, because I'm told that every frog is a Nazi symbol. This is now a Nazi symbol. Yeah. Hey, hi guys, this is a Nazi symbol. The Hawaiian Nazi symbol. It's like it almost gets ridiculous. We were talking about coming into front doors. 4chan is another one that it's such a weird and, at least for my age, difficult to understand.
Okay.
What are you getting up?
Oh, here, I'll show you. I was pulling. I just want to make sure I wasn't talking on my butt because sometimes I think I recognize things wrong. But here we go.
Let's see what we got.
Yeah. So, so this is what it looks like. Let's see, did I get that right? There you go.
Well,
that's a little more obvious, right?
Yeah, that looks like a Nazi symbol.
Yeah, I've seen others that don't as much look like it, but it's pretty clear that, like, on a lapel pin or whatever. It's
look,
like,
I'll give you that one. I'll give you that one. Again,
that's
like
what I mean,
the guy scratched his nose on the left side. I think I'm gonna wait until I see a bunch of really. But it's interesting to see how those come into favors, and I'm not talking about that, but like the Pepe thing was interesting. Started off as a nothing, then went to a joke, then kind of got picked up by, I remember the Hillary Clinton campaign and some others, because on 4chan you had some Nazi talk onto that, and then it kind of, I don't know, the way it evolved was more humorous than upsetting on that part, but now it's all over the place. So, but back to the future. So look, you've got probably 40% of America conservatives are kind of cleaved off in the sense that they really feel like their platforms hate them. There's a couple out there that are trying to make some space out there, and will be blasted as all that stuff. But conservatives kind of don't care about that anymore, I think, because they've realized that they've been called that falsely so often. So, but I'm starting to see some real economic moves on that side. Now, Trump pulling in $1 billion when he merged with that SPAC. Trump will see what they can do on anything, because they've tried a lot of things in the past. They're not how do I say? We've not seen them actually get things done in a business world like that. But they're going to have $750 million to play with. They might do some stuff.
Buy a lot of 40-ounce steak, I think, is really the main point there.
Yeah, but you gotta spend at least a third of it buying Silicon Valley type of guys or stuff like that. I mean, even if it all falls out. Rumble is another interesting one. Rumble's actually, I think, being smarter. They also, I want to say, just merged with a SPAC.
Okay.
And have like a whole lot of cash between them. I think putting a valuation on them, they didn't get this much cash in of like $2.1 billion for Rumble. And it's kind of on the road. Do you see more of that? Do you see it coming politically? Because I don't see a whole lot of, like you said, I don't see a whole lot of whole new fresh ideas. It's like the big fresh idea now is make video vertical.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
All right, fine. Yeah, exactly. No, I don't see a whole lot there either. And the other problem is, like, all of these new guys are like super susceptible to the same old mistakes. I mean, and it's going to go down the same road, which is basically, it's like they're going to start out being free speech and anything goes, and they're going to be like, oh, well, except for not this stuff. And then eventually, I mean, this is how you get, you go from something awful to 4chan to 8chan to 64chan to whatever.
Right.
Is that there's always that. And then a lot of times when the especially if you accidentally create a social network that is actually made of Nazis and you tell them to go away and everybody abandons you, or a better example that's not political, like when I think it was when Tumblr banned porn and their traffic dropped 99%.
Yeah.
I mean, did that surprise anybody? I mean, So yeah, you gotta have.
I looked at buying Tumblr at that point. Were you part of that deal? There was.
I don't remember. Maybe
there was.
We drink a lot.
Yeah, it was someone. I think I was someone. I vaguely remember, and then it got bought up by somebody. But there was a way that for, not a whole lot of money. I mean, low tens of millions or
once all the traffic disappeared, it was
and then it was like, what do we do at that point? Do people still go to it? Is it
maybe? I don't know. So I'm remarkably like not up on this stuff. Like I don't have a lot of time to mess on other platforms, so like I'm generally kind of oblivious as to what they're doing, unless it ends up in the news and I read about it, and then it's like, oh, okay, that's what's going on.
But look, Reddit had one of the best models, because you could have at least, if you could have just pulled it off and stood up to your possibly investors and certainly your staff of say, yeah, we're going to have some bad stuff, but we've siloed it off. You don't have to go there. In other words, just don't have an overall front page that pulls from the most popular, because they always tried to like take the cream of the crop and mix it into their front page, which I don't even know. I don't go to that part of it anymore, so I don't even know what that looks like. Before we started recording, we were talking total non sequitur out here about kids and young people driving.
Yes.
So when I was a kid, I was counting down the days until I could drive my car, and it was a big deal. Grew up in a LA suburb, I mean, the difference between like bicycling somewhere and being able to drive was night and day. And now I'm seeing so many young people are being like, yeah, it's not a big deal, or this or that. I had some in-laws that were like 18 before they started driving. And you said your kids are doing the same, and you have a theory on that. What is that?
Yeah, I got a theory on it, which is basically they've been on screens their entire lives in the car, so they haven't been watching us drive. So they don't know the first damn thing about it. Like when I started driving, I kind of knew it. Like I knew how to start the car. I knew how to turn the wheel. Like I knew how to do that. But I also knew what all the traffic laws were because I've been paying attention. My kids are head down in the back all the time. And I think basically for them, it's a massively steep learning curve that they don't want to deal with.
All right. Well, or as a corollary or addition to that you used to have to go somewhere to hang out with your friends or do something cool.
Right. That too. Now you don't need to.
You only had one, people don't remember this or half of the world doesn't exist at this. You had one phone coming into your house. So if you got on a phone and was talking to somebody for 30 minutes, nobody else could get a phone call and they were screaming at you and whatnot. And now, I mean, look, the fact that we're doing this and it's almost as good as if you were here is pretty cool. So I don't know. I wonder if that's going into it as well.
Yeah, there's no need to do it either because you're right. I mean, if you could, like my kids are constantly like on screens at home, and I don't mean like wasting time necessarily either. I mean, well, it's what, like the quote adults would say is wasting time, but it's the same thing that I was doing when I was a kid, just, easier because I don't have to go anywhere. And then they also have the other option of then there's like, at worst case, there's Uber, although they don't use it. But like as a college student, if you couldn't drive and you could get around, I mean, just get a bike and you could probably get 90% of the places. And if you ever have to go anywhere else, get Uber or have somebody pick you up. So,
you couldn't go on a date. You couldn't go on a date on a bicycle though. So
right.
It's like, but yeah, no, it's like, you can have as much, every time a new technology comes along, the old people just freak out. I mean,
every single time.
You can go and you can find about how radios in cars are going to increase, deaths and they're the worst thing ever, or how trains, when they would go fast enough, would suck the oxygen out and you're all going to die.
There's a good editorial from the late 19th century saying that children are reading too much. That's going to cause them to get dumber or something.
Yeah.
Basically anything that the new generation likes is like, the other old generation is like, what is this crap? What are they doing?
Because look, I remember when I first saw it, it's like, your kid's locked in his room the whole time and he's it's like, get out and meet people. And they're like, Dad, I'm meeting people. I'm talking to Fred, and if you get out of the room, I could still do it.
Doing it right now. Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
And that affects me too. It's like, I find that I'm traveling less with COVID and I don't miss it as much.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I haven't flown in a plane since February. Last time I was out I think it was in Silicon Valley. It's definitely in New York because I think I came back with COVID, but like everybody. Right. But yeah, no, in fact, I'm like, and I think part of like, I've got a really weird sort of perspective. It has to do with being born at like kind of like the exact right freaking time. Like at the beginning, like I was on the internet before the web existed.
Right.
And not only that, but right around the same time, cyberpunk was a popular science fiction genre. And I got to tell you, that's basically like Blade Runner. Or the first one was Neuromancer, the first book about it. But it was just basically about a future where everybody's really poor because they're working minimum wage jobs and corporations run everything and technology is really. And I got to tell you, man, it's like other than like, I mean, Blade Runner pretty much panned out except that the sun comes up occasionally. Like otherwise, it's kind of we kind of got it. So none of this has really been a surprise. Where the technology has been going has been a surprise. Or for that matter, doing what I'm doing, where social media has gone in the last like 5 years. Not a surprise because I was like, at some point, this is going to hit a critical mass and somebody's going to abuse the hell out of it. And it's more or less what exactly happened. So yeah, it's just been weird that like I'm almost 50. And so far I'm like, well, it's kind of turning out the way I figured it would so far. It's really weird.
Yeah. It still begs though, like what kind of future moves? If you were putting money into technology somewhere in America right now, what do you think you'd be looking at? And I mean, this part of social or just give it to Elon Musk and ask for return.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've been working on a couple of projects that I can speak to a little bit. One of them is like, so I just for fun over the summer, I decided to so I take a real dim view of cryptocurrency and blockchain stuff because it's incredibly stupid. But then I was like, well, I could say that and not know anything about it, or I could just get in there and build one. So I built one from scratch using Node.js and bunch of other stuff. Basically followed a tutorial online because it's not that hard.
Right.
And it's even dumber than I thought. Like it's really stupid. And
now, when you mean stupid, you mean the blockchain in mass, or are you talking currencies?
The blockchain is the only interesting part of it, and that was kind of a complete accident. It was an afterthought, really. Right. But it is fascinating that you can have confirmation of transactions and not have to have a central clearinghouse. Like that's pretty neat. Right. But I say literally nobody so I built one of these things, right? So I'm like, okay, it runs. It's not that great. It's not persistent. So like when the servers spin down, it goes away. I could easily change that, but I started asking some other people. I was like, okay, so like if I was going to actually do this and make this a cryptocurrency, and I started asking some very simple questions to people who supposedly knew the answers, and they couldn't answer them.
Right.
And these were not hard questions. Like I'll give you an example. One of them was, so nobody does this, but why wouldn't you throw somebody who creates a transaction on the blockchain? Why don't you throw them into the mining pool for that one block?
Right.
And everybody's like, well, then they tried to say, oh, that they match it up with something else they called front running, which happens in algorithmic trading of stocks, where I'm sure happens where you get in front of the trade basically. And I was like, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm like, they get thrown in the pool and your block time is like 3 seconds. So why wouldn't you just have them sit there and, and they could also leave. Right. But the upshot is that you get a shot to mine the block. Maybe you do. Why does nobody do that? And I'm not saying it's a better idea,
right? But
I just want to know, why does nobody do that? And nobody can answer this damn question.
There is an answer.
Yes, but I don't know what it is.
I don't know what it
I
is.
can't find anybody. Yeah. No, there's got to be, because nobody does it. There's thousands of these, and not a single one of them decided to go this direction. And I can't. And then there's more stuff like that where I'm just like, what? The more I look at it, when people say, "Hey, have you looked at this crypto? They're doing some really cool stuff," and then I take a look at it, it's all bullshit.
Right.
Like,
but aren't you like 3 years behind on that? Didn't you have to get in and get the dumb money and make DrewCoin.com if you're trying to actually turn it into something, or you're just goofing at this point?
Well, I'm doing the same thing I did with Fark back when Reddit said, we're going to do these subreddits, which was kind of like, can I find a safer, a better way to do this?
Right.
And with the blockchain thing in particular, I'm seeing a lot of design decisions out there that are just to make people buy and hold the stuff, obviously, right? Because it's pretty much just a huge scam. But there is something there. What I see happening when I take a look around at what people are throwing their efforts behind, and this kind of makes sense, is almost every crypto out there is spending 99% of its resources trying to make people buy their crypto and believe that it works.
Right.
Which kind of makes sense, because without that, you don't have a company.
Yeah.
But
and it doesn't cost much more to make more on it. Once you've got it. Right.
And I think also, like, once you get like money, that was kind of the point in the first place for these guys. So they don't really care if it works well or does something or whatever.
Right.
So I keep thinking about like something along the lines of that. Like if I saw somebody working on something where I was like, oh, so that's not totally useless. Or like, I could give you like a short version. It's like, one of the avenues I was exploring is that, like, instead of like just playing dollar bill poker, you could have your mining algorithm doing something useful. Like curing cancer, which I think would be kind of cool, because you cure cancer and there's a reason to adopt it.
Right.
That kind of stuff.
But
nobody's doing that.
I'm sorry, does mining have to do something else as it mines? What do you mean?
No, but it could. Like right now it does nothing. Like straight up crypto mining, like on Bitcoin, is like dollar bill poker. That's literally like, although it takes 10 minutes, you're producing all these dollar bill combinations, and at the end of it, the guy with the best hand wins. That's literally what's going on behind the scenes. That's what mining is. So they're just generating numbers. It isn't doing anything. It's wasting a lot of power. But you could do something.
But you can't do both, can you?
You could, yeah, totally.
And it doesn't take resources back from the one another. Huh.
No, I mean, it still uses the same resources, but instead of doing nothing, it's doing something.
That's actually a pretty...
Yeah.
And I hate to say it, even if it didn't end up doing anything,
right?
If somebody could be like, hey, this thing is solving other real world problems, like you say, cancer or sequencing,
still uses
DNAs,
energy, but it's useful,
or something like that. Interesting.
Yeah. So like something like that would be really interesting. But like I said, I don't see anybody doing anything like that. So it's like, keep my eyes open.
You talked about front running. That's one of the biggest scams that nobody's gone to jail with yet. It's like everybody doesn't. It's like, everybody's now on Robinhood and all these trading platforms. And
that's their business model.
And front running is illegal, but they sell that. It's like, have you guys not figured out, how do you think you're getting trades that moves real money around at $0.00? They're making millions and millions somehow, and they're taking it from you a couple pennies at a time. When you come in, they jump in front of you, and they sell it to another hedge fund. They're selling that live data to someone else. So which is weird, because it is illegal, and every one of these companies is doing it.
Yeah, I know.
Maybe that's what it is. Is there some little thing on page 452 of the code going in? But,
I mean, it's out there, but I mean, well, like they say, it's like, if you're paying nothing for something, then you're the product.
You're the product, and you don't hear anybody talking about that, because it's a little tricky to understand. Not a lot tricky to understand, but it's pretty wild on shit like that.
To tell people, it's like they look at the aggregate trading data, and then they sell that to hedge funds that can move faster. That's the business model.
Yeah, and and I've got a friend who's a trader, and he can see it moving sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, he can see it's like he pops in an order here, and he can see that another buy came in here, and so I'm not quite smart enough to figure all that crap out. But it's kind of like it's a huge scam. I'm somewhat convinced that crypto will be the spark that explodes the next pull down of the economy.
Almost definitely at the rate this is going. Like right now, it's like I don't know how big it would have to be to be able to pull that off, but I think we're going to hit that line at some point, and then it's going to be very problematic.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy to try to figure out what to do with your money, because it's like, so much of it is, so many people were hopeful that when Trump came in, the economy was gonna pull. I knew guys who like sold their house and pulled money out of the stock. I know one guy, I swear to God, he literally sold everything he had. He bought physical silver and buried it in multiple parts of the world. I mean, he's ready for the boogaloo to come down, like 100%. And he's living on a beach in a third world country right now.
All right, well, good.
But it's like, those guys are always eventually right? Because
if you predict a disaster, at some point you're going to make it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're the guy who just walked up and said the shuttle's going to blow up if we launch it, you're eventually going to be right. Now, the guy actually who predicted that one time knew exactly what was going to blow up. It's like, it's too cold, the O-rings are brittled, it's going to let things in, and that's not good.
Yeah.
But it's like, so, what do you do in a market that's still popping up 15, 20% a year? Do you put your cash in that and realize that it's like, what do you do when somebody said, should I invest in the stock market? Because it's
I tell them Russell 2000 and walk away. I mean, that's basically it.
But it's like, you also know, I had a relative who came into some serious cash. It's like, you also know at some point before some of the food in my freezer is spoiled, it's going to have a 40% crash or 30% crash. We've lived through it a couple times. And I don't want to be that guy. So I'm like, okay, well, here's what I do, but realize it's going to drop big. And just ride it out. Don't freak out, and don't call me, because I'm telling you now that this is going to happen.
Just keep your eyes off it. Basically, that's what I do, because it's like, I mean, there's all kinds of obvious buys at the time. Like, give an example. Like, if you were like buying oil back in April of 2020, and not only that, but it was like, it's also fairly obvious that like whatever the price of oil is right now, it's going to be different. And if it's rock bottom, odds are it's going to be higher than that at some point. Like, that's not a real hard call to make. Yet people were selling into that.
Yeah, I mean, the tricky part. I mean, there was a point when oil was at a negative value.
I actually, so funny story about that day. So I have a friend of mine who used to be a commodities trader in Chicago, and he's a radio DJ now. And so I called him because I figured he'd know something about it. And I'm watching the spot price of oil. Like it was on the closing date. It was going down. It was like $5, $4, $3, $1, 25 cents. Right. And I was like, dude, should we try to buy this? And I was like, how do I buy this? And he's like, I don't know. And then it went negative.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, what happened there? And he's like, he said, I've never seen anything like that before. And it ended the day at negative $38.
Wow.
Which would have, was crazy, because like they were going to pay you money. But the thing was, I was going to short oil, and the same thing happens when it goes farther negative. Right. I would have lost like so much money.
Lost a huge.
Oh my God.
A buddy of mine actually has some oil wells, like a couple oil wells on a piece of land in California that was like handed down through generations or whatnot. And what he explained to me, and I didn't understand, I still don't understand the why 100%, is to shut that down and restart it is hugely expensive and difficult. So it's like you've got this thing that's going, and so but it could, and I don't know exactly why that is. You probably need special, but you can't just turn it off.
Hire people. Yeah, it's not automated.
So then he was like, I don't have anywhere to put my oil, because people stopped driving. The refiners are like, sorry guys, we're full. All of everywhere where you could store oil was filled up with oil, and he's pumping oil. And it's like, that's why it went down, because at a certain point, it's like, well, what am I going to do with your oil? We got no place to put it.
It's not super stable either. There was I think it was a Gawker article about a guy who actually went out and tried to buy a barrel of oil. At the end of the day, he couldn't, because the EPA regs against it. Like, that stuff's incredibly flammable, obviously, because it's oil. And it also leaks toxic gas just sitting there. So yeah, even storing this stuff is like a hell of a thing. You can't just leave it out in the backyard. You got to do something with it.
We always bitch about, it's easy to make big oil companies and we hate them, but they get a product and they bring it a long way, usually pretty clean. I mean, Valdez notwithstanding, and some things. I mean,
they didn't mean to do that.
Well, but I mean, it's like they're transporting billions of gallons of flammable shit all over the world, and getting it to me where I can now buy a refined version of it for 6 months ago I could get it for $250 and now it's $450, but that's still a pretty small number when you think like how this stuff got to me, and that nobody's they don't explode all that often.
Yeah, exactly. Surprisingly. Yeah, when they do though, boy, it's trouble.
Yeah, it's not good. Yeah, I don't think that's a fun. I don't know. That's not a fun business. Everybody,
I wouldn't want to do
and
it.
then everybody's praying for you to go out of business so that solar can go. Do you have solar at your house?
No, we don't have enough of a solar score, I think it is, or something.
Right.
And there's also like I live in Kentucky where nobody else is using coal, but we are. That stuff's cheap. So not saying I'm in favor of coal, but until they change it, I'm going to keep paying these rock bottom rates.
Does it? How's the air quality then?
Great.
In
Yeah.
Kentucky?
Perfect. Yeah. No
And they
problem at
burn
all.
it there, and they burn it in a more safe way than they used to, or why is that great?
Oh, well, I mean, it's not great in the sense that like, we don't need any more, CO2 in the atmosphere, but that said, it's like,
No, I'm talking about I'm talking about what you're breathing in on a physical, like a health thing there.
No, we
okay.
just not that much of a population. They're not in cities.
Right.
They're just not doing that much of it. So it's no big deal. I'm not saying it's great. I'd rather there be none, but until that happens, like one thing that might work would be wind power. Cause apparently, that's going to keep happening. We're going to get tornadoes every week from now till the end of time. Can't wait for that to happen, but that'd be the way to go.
That was bad. Now, is that the main thing that you're worried about in Kentucky and in the center? I mean, you guys get some earthquakes,
right?
I mean, natural occurrence.
Yeah.
You get some earthquakes,
Yep.
but it's mainly tornadoes.
Well, I mean, as far as natural disasters go, yeah, but like, I don't know, like they're not. This is going to sound bad, especially in a week when 200 people died from them. But honestly, like, it's not that big a deal until that starts happening every week. Cause tornadoes aren't hurricanes. And I think a lot of people confuse the two.
Right.
Hurricanes will cut destructive paths hundreds of miles wide. But it's like, even in the cities that got massively destroyed, there's still a path through them.
Right.
Like,
right.
I'm not saying.
Wait, are you talking hurricanes or tornadoes?
Tornadoes.
Okay.
Tornadoes.
Okay.
Yeah. So the thing is like, if everybody's scared of them because you don't want to get hit by one, but at the end of the day, like you can also outrun one in the car if you had to. I mean, not saying it's great, but
Helen Hunt did.
Yeah.
Or maybe
that's
she
right.
didn't. I don't know. I got to watch that again.
Cows didn't make it.
Just to watch
so the
Helen
upshot
Hunt
is like,
flop
I mean, if
around.
you look at like the naturally occurring things that kill you in Kentucky, I don't think tornadoes crack the top 100, maybe, but I'm not sure.
It's still meth, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, it totally is.
It's actually worldwide. I mean, it's an interesting thing that mankind kind of tamed nature. I don't know when that was, but I mean, nature could be a bitch, right? I mean, nature
Always
killed,
comes back, yeah.
flood, and it still does in parts of the world still haven't gotten used to it. As Sri Lanka, it seems to rain, and then you have 40,000 people die in a flood, where we don't have those kind of natural disasters like we used to in certainly most of the first world, and in a lot of the developing countries.
Yeah, well, actually, to your point, like the amount of I think the amount of homes that got destroyed by that tornado was like something in the thousands. Like I want to say like 5,000 to 10,000.
Right, but people are
and I'm shocked that like there's less than 100 people confirmed dead, and there's another 100 missing.
Right.
But I would have predicted looking at the damage, I was like, holy crap, how do people survive this stuff?
So it was thousands of homes. I didn't know it was that big.
Yeah, no, it was huge. It was 2 tornadoes that were on the ground for almost 300 miles.
Right.
And then for some reason just went through multiple cities. Like it was nuts. In fact, I was a near miss. The 2 worst ones stopped on the north and the south side of my county, which is only 15 miles across. So it was pretty tight. Yeah.
It's tough to figure that shit out when you're watching the news, right?
Yeah.
So I worked for Fox for almost 20 years, and I remember one time Hurricane Ivan. So what you do is you set up crews. Let's say it's going to hit Florida. They like to hit Florida. So
yes, they do.
It shows that it's coming in Central Florida or whatever city. So you station a crew there, a crew here, a crew there, because they always have some. So you try to spread your resources out because you want good pictures. You want to be, you want to show what's going on there. And we were in Fort Lauderdale with the crew I was with, and it basically missed us. It was a hard rain. Yeah. Well, what do? You still, you got there, so it's like, all right, fine. We didn't say find the worst thing. What we said is find the best pictures, right?
Yeah,
and that's what you do. That's what your
that's
job.
Thing, yeah.
That's what your job is. So we found it was a rain. It was a rain, right? And it, again, it hit other people a little harder. And so we found one house where the tree had fallen over and whatnot. You put the guy in front of that house, and he's doing his report, and then people call up their friends in Fort Lauderdale saying, "Oh my God, are you okay?" And everybody's like, "That's why that happens." And they're like, "What is that?"
It's raining.
Whereas like the So and that's usually what the news does, is
Yeah.
make something small
Right.
look a lot worse.
It's hard to tell. And plus the other problem is everybody, like I said, I think the damage looks the same as hurricanes.
Right.
And like 2004 in the summer, that year Florida got hit by 4 hurricanes, like in a row pretty much. And I ended up driving across, like just going south of Orlando across one of those devastation zones.
Right.
Because I was trying to get to Key West. And I mean, just for miles, and I'm not to, diminish what happened with the tornadoes, but man, like hurricanes are so much worse. I mean, hundreds of miles across, thousands of people affected.
The hardest I had crews kind of mentally deal with it. I mean, war's hard because you're seeing people die, you're seeing body parts, but it was the Indonesian tsunami. The Indonesian tsunami, and they were because it mangles people up. It's an ugly way to go. It's just, and the worst part of it was you couldn't get out of it. I mean, going and covering it later, you would look around in 360 degrees, and as far as you could see, as far as you could get in your car, it was like the whole thing was death and destruction. And that kind of that was more difficult for some of my guys who went out there, than the war.
I can't imagine. Yeah. And that because I think that didn't they kill like 250,000 people or something like that on like multiple countries. I mean, it was big. It
was amazingly horrific.
Yeah,
it was amazing. But back to my earlier point, things like that are getting less and less over time. I mean, maybe it'll all warm up and it'll kill us all again.
Yeah, probably.
But humankind has been doing, I don't know, pretty well at all of this stuff. I mean, when you consider what it was like in the 1400s, where the world, the nature was probably one of your top forms of death, whether it was getting eaten by something or burned up in a fire that you can't, imagine a forest fire, that
or just
you can't
stepping
drive
on
out of.
Or just stepping on a rusty nail. I mean, you're dead. The end. Yeah, my favorite stat. I was working on a book on Florida for a little while because Florida's full of like weird stories, and one of the ones I never forget was, and I think this may be why. I mean, one of the reasons why deaths are going down is because people have gotten a little bit smarter since then. But like there were, I think it was like 5,000 people killed in Miami in 1930 by a massive hurricane that hit.
Right.
And I was reading at the time, what had happened was like only about 25 years earlier, the population of Miami was like 3,000 people. So this city had gotten really big and filled up with people who weren't native. And what happened was that the hurricane hit and most people survived it, but then the eye goes over and everybody went outside. And all the locals are going, no, get back in the house. And they're like, what are you talking about? They're like, that's the eye of the hurricane. They're like, what's an eye of a hurricane?
Right.
And they got hit by the back end of it. Because
the same thing happened with that tsunami.
Yeah. Oh yeah, sure.
The first thing happens before it comes.
Because the water goes out.
Yeah. So if you're ever like at a anybody who's
like,
watching,
if
you're ever out on an ocean and it all disappears,
turn around and run.
Yeah, start running that second. Not like, holy shit, this is the most interesting thing I've seen in my life. Go?
I'm gonna stay here and look at it.
That was probably the only good lesson on that thing. But think about it. Back in the day, it's like my app now, the one that comes in Apple. It's like, it's going to stop raining in 18 minutes and it's going to start again in 30. Imagine, before we had airplanes and radar and satellites to say there's going to be a hurricane coming in. And then it's like, okay, a hurricane's coming in. Well, let's get in our car, jump on the expressway and get it. Yeah, no. I mean, man, you must have been just, you had to be a tougher person back there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like if you had kids, only, like I think like the mortality rate before age 5 was like 25% or something. I mean,
which is why you had 8 of them. And
exactly. Yeah, because
now you have them. Now you have multiple in case one of them turns out to be a dumb fuck.
Yeah, exactly. You got to hedge.
I tell my kids that it's like, you realize why I had 3 kids, right? Because I could place my somebody's got to raise me when I'm old or take care of me and do all that. And if
you told them which one, you think is the dumb fuck yet?
Well, what you do is
you got to hold that back. I figure.
Well, it's either that or you pull the old, but you're my favorite one. And you tell that to each 3 of them, and then then you play the things. No,
exactly.
No. I'm glad my children won't watch this because it'll be boring to them.
But, we'll just talk about boring stuff in the front, and they'll never catch this.
You like raising kids?
I do actually. I like it a lot. It also helps that Heather's got a graduate background in counseling psychology. And concentrating a lot on kid stuff, and it's amazing. That stuff works if you know what you're doing.
Really?
So it's kind of wild. I have to give her all the credit though, because like it wasn't my instinct. But when you know somebody who knows the rules and you play along, it works. It's kind of neat. Right. Yeah. But she kind of said like the real challenge of parenting is making sure your children don't become supervillains. That's literally what you're working on.
Huh. And a lot of them do. And
right.
Yeah.
Then you feel like an asshole because you're like, man, should have nipped that in the bud.
To me, the toughest part, well, there's a lot of tough parts about it, but the toughest part is figuring out how and how much to let go and let them go and make their own mistakes and go and screw up, right?
See, I've never had any trouble with that.
But I mean, we're in a smothering economy where when your kid goes out and rides the bike, they're going to crash and do certain things. And, there was a time where you were like, you're too young to ride a bicycle. And then there was a time where you're like, okay, he's going to get hurt, but it's a bicycle and you gotta go there, all the way up through the end of their life. I mean, you start off with, they're wiggling on a table, and if you don't feed them every hour, they're going to die up till, all right, go to college and try to visit me every once in a while.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly. Yeah, I did. I was a big, strong proponent of, and honestly, this isn't for everybody. It's just, I've got a real, whatever the opposite of risk averse is. Like, I'm not risk seeking, risk tolerant beyond like belief. Yeah. And I'm a big proponent of the, okay, here's what's going to happen. And it's going to suck, but I'm not going to stop you. Go right ahead. See how that goes, to the point where the minute I do that, my kids automatically stop now because they're like, I don't see how this plays out, but they're like so gun shy at this point of doing the wrong thing. I don't give them guilt. I'm like, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, I always gave mine. I would always err on the side, if there was errors, and it really wasn't, of just letting them do their thing and giving them some guidance on things. It's like, because what I saw growing up was the kids who turned it to be the biggest assholes were the ones whose parents did that. So it was like the ones whose like parent was like calling up to, well, we didn't have phone. Well, we didn't have cell phones back then, but it was like really making sure they didn't drink in high school or go to the party and you have to be early and this or that. They were the ones that when they went to college, became alcoholics and STD ridden because it was just like they were ripping off their clothes and running around there. It was like, so, you didn't want to be the one saying, use drugs or whatnot, but you didn't want to be the one clamping it down too much. I mean, even the anti-drug thing back in the day, it's like, I think it's good for the government to probably tell kids not to use things that hook so many of them and screw so many of them up. Yeah. But they did it by lying to everybody. So it was like, if you smoke that reefer, you're going to be doing crack because it's a gateway drug and this and that.
You're going to worship Satan like immediately.
Yeah. And it's like, and then you do it, and then you're like,
oh, I don't understand the big deal here.
Well, that was kind of fun. I mean, I didn't do much that day. I just ate some Cheetos, but I enjoyed it. And so it's like, so I, even on stuff like that, I tried to tell my kids, it's like, okay, here are the real consequences that I can know of this drug or that, and if it's certain ones, you might get arrested if they pull it in your car and
depending on what state you're in.
And what drug it is. And that might affect your college, college thing if that's what you're pushing for. Although I'm less and less college centric these days than I ever was. And a couple of my kids are split on that, which was, did you push hard for college for your kids?
No, not really. So like my oldest just turned 18 and he's finishing up his senior year and he wants to be a coder, and you kind of don't need, not only do you kind of not need college for that, that's probably not the best place to go either. Yeah. And he also wants to get into like video game design. And so like, I'm not encouraging him to check out like internships and stuff, but he's going to take a year off and see where it goes, but I'm not too worried about it. And if he decides he wants to go, that's fine too. It's like, okay, whatever you want to do, man, what I strongly recommend against is I was like, don't go to like Harvard or Yale, because that's expensive. Like for undergrad, like when I was doing undergrad, I got my MBA at Columbia and Cal Berkeley. Man, I don't know what those other undergrads are doing there. I mean, they were spending way more money than I did for exactly the same damn thing. Like I can't figure it out.
Well, I would say go to Harvard or Yale because just that phrase on your resume will carry you through other shit. Well, even if you didn't learn any more, but don't go to that outside of those like 8 schools. Those rest of those $60,000 a year schools, unless you're getting something very particular. And so I had a kid who was a coder, and then a kid who's went into film, and it's like both of those things. It was like I don't know what college does for you, but it was tough for me because my parents were my dad was his dad was an immigrant, and my dad never made it through like 8th grade, and my mom graduated high school, and so for them, success for their child meant going to college, right? That was like the next step up in the American dream. And so, there was a huge amount of, I want to say pressure, but it was so much I didn't even realize it. It was just like air. It was like, you're going to college or you're going to die. But I was like, oh, okay, yeah, great. And they were able to afford that for me and all that. So to then like kind of go from that world to have kids say, yeah, I can learn this shit on YouTube.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a jolt, but it's totally the right thing.
Yeah. Well, that also, and like how much more expensive it is now. I mean, hell, I spent like my college tuition was 15 grand a year at a time when I could have gone to a state school for free. And if I'd paid, it would have been $2 grand a year.
Right.
And so like 15 was a hardship then. And now it's like that same school I went to, which is Luther College, which they're fine, but now they want $45,000 a year.
And
I'm like,
and even when you put like in constant dollars, education is jammed through the roof. Yeah. And again, especially then when you're like, and you can get almost all of it for free on you can go to Harvard classes for free. Yeah. And they even have the class on a lot of these classes. They have the class, and they have where the RA, was it RA or TA? The kid student teaches the TA. The RA is for the where you live. The TA. Yeah. You can even get those. I mean, you can get a lot of stuff there. One of those things that I've seen that I thought would take over more. What's the Khan Academy?
Oh yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. So there's different versions of that floating around. I saw that this year with my kids in school during the pandemic. Google Classroom picked up a ton of that stuff.
Right.
They don't teach it exactly the same way, but it does. Like there's a lot more insight to what's going on. Like the teachers are grading directly into it. They can do classes on it. Mm-hmm. They can tell immediately like who hasn't turned in stuff and why. So they've kind of implemented some of those features in there, but I think then they're running up against, like the education at a state level has got a lot of regulations they got to adhere to, and it's not their fault, like they're stuck with it because somebody passed the damn law.
Well, but they probably passed the law. I mean, in California for a number of years, the two biggest, when I ran for office 20 years, 30 years, a lot of years ago, the two biggest special interest groups were the Teachers Association and the Nurses Association. I mean, they poured millions and millions into it. So they wrote the fucking laws usually.
Yeah. I don't know about here, though. They don't seem like
I don't know.
Yeah. But anyway, so some of that stuff got implemented. And I think the ability to pull out people that are struggling is there, which I thought was kind of the big innovation with that thing.
Yeah, that it wouldn't let you progress until you knew what you were doing, especially for things like math where you have to build on it. Yeah. You progressed at your own speed, and it would allow the kids who understood. To me, when I heard that guy Khan, this is his name, right?
Salman Khan,
Salman Khan. All right. When I heard him give it, and when I saw the TED Talk, I was like, this should revolutionize education. Yeah. And it's gone a lot slower than I expected and hoped. So.
Yeah, well, there's all the adoption. Plus, the other problem is like, not all school districts have enough money to pull something like that off. Like, we're kind of lucky. The county I live in's got a low population and high land value because it's horse farms.
Right.
But the town is poor, which is a really weird dichotomy. But they have plenty of money for schools, so they can actually pull stuff off like that in a way that like.
Is it more expensive? I mean. It's soft. Really, it's a piece of software. I mean, what's that? And I think the guy he was giving it away for free too.
Yeah, I think Google Classroom is doing the same thing that that's where Apple computers came from. Remember, they were giving them to schools and stuff.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know what the cost is, but all I know is our district uses it, and it seems to work pretty well. So
interesting.
Kind of works. Yeah.
Teachers took a hit with this pandemic thing on a number of levels because a lot of parents. When the teachers seem to be overly concerned about COVID, and you have to kind of go to the most scared person level in society. If there's one person, and dude, I don't know about Kentucky. You're probably a little different. I'll walk by somebody on a hiking trail, like multiple, not like a hiking trail, but a hiking trail, and some of them will be with their mask on and like turn and duck down like the nuclear weapons were starting, kind of like. So there are different levels of fear, and here there's a lot of that. But teachers, I think, took a hit because I think a lot of parents A, didn't like that, and then B, started doubting some of the things that they were doing in there. So I don't know if that's going to reverse itself or
it's hard to say. I mean, part of the problem was too, so my sister's a teacher, and I've got a couple of friends who are college professors, and they were saying that, we're never trained to teach classes on Zoom, and they kind of had to figure it out, but it was like, restarting your entire syllabus from scratch because you didn't know how it was going to play out. Right. And then the compounding problem is that some kids did remarkably worse, and a few kids did remarkably better, which was really kind of odd. Like, especially the ones with like ADD issues or whatever. Like one of my kids is like super twitchy. Right. He excelled in online stuff. Like, he doesn't struggle anyway.
But was it that different? I mean, what was different about it? So obviously, they're sitting here. What about that process made it better for him?
I think the fact that he's a little too fidgety and maybe that disrupts classes where when he's at home, it doesn't make any difference to anybody.
Right.
Is part of the problem. So, but I mean, there's just this whole gamut of like sort of outcomes that you got with that. And at the end of the day, like it all just dropped on teachers with no,
right.
Well, nobody knew how to do it. It wasn't like there was a playbook for this anyway.
Right.
But it just kind of came out of nowhere. So every teacher I know is just like, man, this is just sucks. And they all hate masking too. I don't blame them for that either. But speaking of which, I got to tell you something really funny. So my wife's sister, whom I think you've met, and her husband came to Kentucky recently.
Okay.
And that was their first trip since the pandemic happened. And Kentucky's in a very weird spot regarding public health safety. And here's why. So there's a very strong contingent of people that have been anti-mask, anti-vax from the beginning.
Right.
And it's basically been all of the school districts trying to hang on and fight these people until everybody got vaccinated. But what happened was that we all got vaccinated. And now it's like, okay, now the vaccinated people are anti-mask. Because we're like, look, I did my thing. Like, I'm safe. You guys had plenty of time.
Right.
So guess what? We'll give you exactly what you want. And it's not working out for him. It's working out great for me because I'm vaccinated. But other guys like,
but
you had time.
Yeah. No, I get it.
Yeah.
Look,
so what I'm saying is like the people who would have been the very, I mean, and I was too, like I was super health conscious when we had no options whatsoever, but now that we get vaccinated, I'm like, okay, well,
that was supposedly the point. You get a vaccine and then you could be like, fucking leave me alone. Right. But then they're like, but it doesn't always work. And so you can still be a criminal, Drew.
That's what I'm fine with it. Yeah. Luckily that plays well in Kentucky. Like I said, it's what everybody wanted. We're like, I'm like, here you go.
I followed state by state numbers as much as I could. And I never really saw, and everybody, it's like sports teams. It's like everything in politics. Everybody could pinpoint, oh my God, look at Florida. The New York governor, after everybody dies, he's taking laps saying, look, nobody has COVID anymore. It's like, but you're still worse than everybody else. I mean, it's like, you're worse than the worst country in Europe by 3.
Yeah.
But then they've kind of caught up, as that first wave of most vulnerable got killed. When I look at it, I can see that if you're on an island or if you're in a very rural place, you could do pretty well. Hawaii's doing pretty well.
Yeah, if you got
Alaska's
one entry exit thing.
Yeah, when you got one airport, it kind of helps. God bless Australia and New Zealand. Although it's gotten into Australia, and I don't think they're going to be able to
Omicron's coming for everybody.
But I couldn't find any kind of reasonable, any correlation between masking policies and then 3 weeks later, 5 weeks later, the amount of people who got stuff or not. I just didn't. I saw the Christmas bump. I saw the Thanksgiving bump. You would see it literally like 2 weeks later. And in countries that didn't have 2 holidays like that, you would see a single thing if they just had one. So, I mean, clearly everybody coming home and putting their hands in the nut bowls and breathing on everybody and sitting around the table.
We're about to do it again too.
Had a lot more impact than walking through a grocery store. Which I don't want to say is zero, but it's a minimal effect by what I could look at all those numbers.
Church appears to be the real dangerous place, and mostly because people are singing, and that's like straight up like just blowing COVID fans in your face. But so what we saw here is that so Kentucky's kind of weird because it's a split party government, and the Democrat governor put in a bunch of rules, and then the Republican legislature just basically knocked him out from underneath him.
Right.
But it kind of backfired on him. It was really funny because I'd always wondered so why hasn't that ever been done before? And well, the reason why was because the Democrat governor was like, he's like, I would be asking you to mask, but I can't because these guys took it over. And so what happened was that up until that point, our trajectory had been more like New York and California. But the minute that shifted and they got rid of all the rules, we started looking like Texas and Florida out of nowhere.
We say New York and California. New York went horribly and California went gradually. In other words, New York got hit. Yeah. Okay. That wasn't mass. That was dead. They're dead already.
Yeah, well, that's that too. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, so the fall rolls around. All of a sudden, like we're doing the same thing that Florida. Like we had big surges. They had big surges. Everywhere that was doing nothing had a big surge. Right. And now all the surges are hitting off in the places that were trying hard because people.
But again, I look at California. We're probably maybe 30% better, and the only number I look at is deaths per million. Yeah. And then you have to kind of age adjust it too, because it's like old people just died of this thing, and young people didn't. I mean,
basically,
we're probably about 20% better than Florida.
Oh yeah.
But like a lot of southern states got, when you look at on those bases, it's a lot of southern states.
They just got
still hit. New York, New Jersey are but it totally made sense that it hit there first. I mean, it's like they were high travel places.
And they're doing nothing. Like I did a trip to I down to Atlanta. I rode a 100-mile bike ride in January last year. And so like we get outside of like central Kentucky where I live, and all of a sudden like there's no COVID apparently based on what people are doing out here.
Right.
Like I walked into a grocery store like in Metro Atlanta with a mask on, and everybody's looking at me like,
right,
what's wrong with you? Like, why are you giving me crap about this?
We found the pussy.
Yeah, I guess.
There
But
he
I was
is.
like, that attitude really surprised me because, like, so at my local store, still at this point, like, it's about 50% of people wear masks and 50 don't. But I don't like give crap to anybody for picking one of those, you know?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. The only time I
get it.
feel like I should wear one is on a plane.
Yeah,
it's like, and to be honest, I don't like those people even if without COVID all that much.
It's
And I would
simple.
often get sick on a plane. I'd fly back and forth to New York every 2 weeks, and I'd often pick it up there. But in a store, as long as you're not coughing on me, I'm okay. But airplanes, I'll give you airplanes.
Yeah, but in Alabama and Georgia, until you got close to downtown Atlanta, like people were doing nothing, like literally nothing. Just like, whatever.
Look, my son always was pushing for let's lock the old people up for 1 month and let's have one big frickin' COVID party.
Yeah, there you
and
go.
Just and kiss whoever you know, shake hands and do it. Let it rip through society. And I'm not convinced that would have been worse. I mean, the best argument against that was, hey, let's hold on long enough until the vaccines come. Yeah, and
that's kind of where I was.
If we could stay hunkered down, it went from 2 weeks flatten the curve, stop all the, just stop overwhelming hospitals and that only happened sporadically at the very beginning in New York. In California during our height surge at the beginning of last year in Los Angeles, they had some things where it took you a month to bury somebody.
And so that's what I was talking about because like right here we had 6 weeks where it was just an absolute clusterfuck. I mean, it was a disaster. Like all the hospitals were overflowing. Like it was nuts. But then they all died. So I guess. But
then it's like you got those antibodies, which I think are going to show to be a lot stronger than any vaccine when you've had it, right?
So right now the science says that the killer combo is if you've had it and you got vaccinated. They call that some guys are calling that bulletproof immunity. But if you've only got one or the other, it's not as good. Like triple vax is better. But if you've had it, like that's basically
and got vaxxed.
Yeah. But if you haven't gotten vaccinated though, and you've had it, like apparently there's no protection against Omicron on this. So it's going to be.
It seems reasonable, but I'm also a believer that these these pharmaceutical companies are. I want to see somebody else doing the research beyond them. All right.
Yeah.
Maybe Pfizer didn't. I mean, Moderna was trading at $18 before the COVID. 18 months later, it was at $4.80. Yeah. That's like a 3,000% increase in things. And God bless them. They're helping us out. It worked out for them. But they do have an incentive to say, and you know what else you need to do? You need to take some more of our shit.
Yeah, like every week if possible. That's the problem is like they need to stop doing their own announcements and let other people do that.
Yeah, but when they do it, the media is just like, oh my God, Pfizer, and they just turn it into fact. I mean, if I'm an evil laird guy working for one of those companies, I'm pushing through all Omicron. I don't know what the next ones are, but you got to get
Andromeda. I think is next.
Is that what it is? Okay.
I'm just guessing. Seems like it.
All right, dude. Well, look. Any other stuff that we can? What else? What else that you got? What else you got cooking on life?
Good question. I've been I don't know. I've been reconcentrating on some of the weirder aspects of Fark recently. Well, including like, so I finally decided like our ad rates have always been like super low. So I was like, well, let me see if I can figure out back end Google ad systems. And the short version is because it's boring to talk about this with anybody who doesn't do it, but I figured it out. I didn't crack the code or discover anything nobody else knew, but I got enough to where I was like, oh, okay, that's what we've been doing wrong this whole time.
What are the major thrusts of that?
Well, so it's interesting. Like the way that the ad system works on the back end is there's kind of this, like, there's just an auction running all the time. Somebody hits a page, all the ads go off, highest bidder gets it, basically is what's going on there. But there's so many nuances to what's going on the back end. It's just kind of wild. And what it boils down to is like ad networks have kind of got this sort of double-edged sword problem they've got where basically they have this massive block of inventory they have to get rid of. And you've got like, on the one hand, you've got, the people that want to do 10 cents per 1,000 impressions. And on the other hand, you got like people that'll pay up to like, $20 or whatever. And they have to make both those people happy, but they have two completely different goals. And the problem is that long and the short of it is that if you don't configure your ad back end to do anything, it'll just start getting all those low bids. Like that's all that runs through there all day long is those 0 to 10 cent guys. But the minute you go, hey, you know what? I don't think I want any of that anymore. All of a sudden they're like, oh, so would you like to have this higher dollar revenue stuff? And it's like, well, yeah, I would actually.
So literally, it was as simple as not taking the low bids and having some empty space sometimes.
Except that it takes a while for the ecosystem to adjust. And the best way I can describe it is like I'm a pattern guy, so I love swimming in data.
Right.
And honestly, what it looks like to me is like if you think about how a GPS works, but from the standpoint of it telling 1 million people where to go. And let's say 5,000 of you are using this GPS going down the interstate and there's an accident.
Right.
But what it's going to start doing is it's going to start sending people in different directions. And then it has to make adjustments. And I don't know how complex this is. I don't know if they think about it really hard.
So first says go somewhere else.
Yeah, just go up 31W and, oh, now that's full up. So, okay, now try US 68. And then, or are they like, okay, so we have like 20 different routes and we're going to send one guy there and one guy here and whatever. So what I'm seeing on my end is that once you say, okay, I don't want this low dollar stuff, which hurts because you shut revenue off. Then you see the higher dollar guys are like very slowly go, oh, you have 10% more inventory this week. Okay. And then they bid in again and they go, oh, there's 10 more here. So you can see all the big guys ramping up.
Right.
But at the rate they're going, it's going to be another year. So it's kind of pain in the ass. But it's worth it. So ask me again in 3 months and I'll tell you what I think.
Banner ads is a hard road to go. It's just,
well, and also you see so many different weird patterns. Like I was looking at individual buyers and the way individual buyers, like not surprisingly, the United States government will just throw money wherever. Great. Disney's a little smarter about it. You got to have some demographics that they want, but they'll come in and get it. And then what's really funny is like almost every advertiser I saw coming in is looking for high quality inventory, except Amazon. And they're just buying everything. They don't even care. They'll just buy all your garbage inventory all day long.
Amazon is that stuff going on direct sales for them, or is it more front door?
I don't know, actually. I haven't taken a chance to look at it. I mean, my guess is it's probably direct sell because they don't need brand advertising for Amazon. So maybe
you'd think that, yeah.
They may, and maybe they know who they're going after. But one of the more bizarre bidding patterns I saw was Logitech of all people. Like, I actually want to like call those guys up and ask them what they're doing, because what they're doing is like everybody's landing, like the people that are landing prime inventory all hit at a certain dollar level, and Logitech is consistently getting that inventory for half the price. Consistently, even though I've told Google not to let them do it, and they still do it. It's really interesting.
You think they're going in under different brands, or pretending to be somebody different, or
what I think they're doing is they're doing. Remember, we were talking in the beginning about like all that arbitrage stuff. So what it looks like they're doing is they're firing a bell curve spread of sample bids into the system to try to figure out where my levels are.
Right.
And then once they figure out where they are, because basically in the back end, it's a little boring, but Amazon, you can set a floor or a target. Right. The floor would be nobody below this gets in. The target is, let some of them in.
Right.
Try like
this is what I want and aim for this, but I'll let some of the lower end.
Right.
I see.
And I think what Logitech is doing is it's finding those fuzzy targets.
Right.
And then it figures out what's the least amount it could bid to win some of the time. And then it just plows all its money into that. That's what it looks like. And I'm like, that is so brilliant. I also don't want them to do it, but it's brilliant. Like I'm amazed. But only them, nobody else. Everybody else is just,
those guys can't go work to make this solar stuff work twice as well.
Yeah.
I keep waiting for I keep like no, someday some Chinese American kid is going to make the algorithm on solar go to panels and make it actually work for you've seen the efficiencies of them do very well, but they've kind of flattened out on that, But no, they're worrying about how to steal an extra penny from Fark.
No, I know that's the thing too. Is like, and the only thing that bothers me about the future is that we are spending so much like time, attention, and money screwing off. Now, granted, I mean, this seems like an odd complaint coming from somebody whose job is exactly that, but
to encourage 1 million people to screw off.
Yeah, like Facebook doesn't add anything to the world. Like I like to think we make people laugh, so that's fun. But Facebook just makes people mad and genocidal, and it's like. And the amount of like, I mean, what if those guys had been building like a better nuclear reactor the entire time? I mean, holy crap, we have free power.
Yeah.
Well, we have free power that would then try to teach us to kill each other, I guess.
Well, at least it'd be easier to do it. No,
true.
Look, you wonder, what was that stupid Disney movie or one of the ones where
you're gonna have to narrow it down.
Yeah, no, they're usually pretty good, but it was the one, and it might not have been Disney. It was the one where everybody was fat and lived on a cruise ship. WALL-E.
Yeah.
Was that Disney or was that?
That was Pixar, but
Pixar.
Disney now,
and it was kind of like, go fuck yourself. I got the point. They kept driving it. They can't even sit up to drink their Slurpees and whatnot. But you kind of do wonder. It's like. If you made just the world happy for your citizens, or you didn't make it, but that's what happened. And if everybody is fine sitting, working enough to pay their bills so that they can stay home playing Halo, it's like, what does that do for you as a society over time? It probably turns you. It probably turns you into one of those. Look, I'm a big believer, and it's like that America's pretty cool. I mean, somehow we've rocked. I mean, it's like, when you look at what America's done to and for the world, it's like we're living in a very, very unusual society. I mean, you go to I won't pull off specific countries, but I mean, a lot of countries, all that, it's like, oh, let's just take Greece. Fuck them.
Yeah, it's like, do Belgium. Nobody cares about Belgium.
Yeah. It's like, that's kind of what they're doing. They never really accomplished much. It's just kind of like the ones who plod through life, and they're pretty happy, and they are. I'm sure they have good, but you don't want to see that happen to America, because we're the ones that have driven forward technology and medicine and industry and entertainment, and kind of driven the progression of humans, driven the make us a better species, hopefully until we don't figure out how to kill each other accidentally all at once, right?
Yeah, or until we turn all the AIs on. And man, there was an article today, I'm going to do it on the live stream later. It was about they had an AI debate ethics with itself,
right?
And it actually, the conclusion it reached was it should turn itself off and delete itself to save humanity. I shit you not. I'm like, great. Now here's the problem though: the data set they gave it was 33 gigs of Reddit comments, so we're lucky it didn't turn into a racist.
Well, you've seen where they've done that intentionally, right? Where
there's like, here's
who was that? Was that was it a Google? It was some bot, and like when they asked it enough particular kinds of question, they could turn it into misogynistic, racist.
And they also just watch cat videos all day long too, and it's just kind of like, well, that's the internet.
It's kind of like, hey, you have described the internet. Maybe we're better without it. But
well, I was reading that among AI guys, they've been talking about the issue of maybe we're using the wrong starting data set. Yeah, I think that's it. I think you figured it out.
Have you ever turned off the internet for any extended length of time?
Oh, I do it all the time. Yeah, no, like I work 8 to 5, and then I'm fucking done, man. Like that's it. I walk away. Right. Like, or here's a different way to. So I spend Monday through Thursday working on Fark. Right. And then at 4 o'clock, I'm actually going to do it pretty soon after we're done with this recording. I do a live stream every Thursday.
Right.
And then that's it. And so what usually happens is like 3 days will go by where I'll be like, oh, what did I miss over the weekend? And then like, oh, there were tornadoes that killed hundreds of people near me. No, I do it all the time. That's why I ride bikes all the time. I'm always out like just zipping around.
Yeah. So I actually did about 6 months ago. I took 2 weeks off. I literally went to a mountain. I just Ted Bundy'd it. No, not Ted. Was he the one? No, Ted Bundy was the killer. Who was the guy who out in the woods, the cabin in the
Unabomber?
Unabomber, thank you. I Unabombered it. I literally went up to a little cabin up on the Eel River, Central California, Northern California. And there was no cell phone, and there was no Wi-Fi or anything like that. And it was good. It was good. I mean, I missed talking to some of my friends. I missed talking to my girlfriend. I called her once. I took a one break. I bicycled into a town where I got a cell phone connection. But like being unplugged from like the food fight of politics and we like to pretend like news is teaching us, and you do learn things. Hey,
sometimes
when the water all falls out, leaves your bay, get in the train, get in the car and
go the other way.
But for the most part, no. It's entertainment, and it was a form of entertainment I really didn't miss. I'm back to it. I'm not. I do a lot less of it, and I'm not on Facebook, although that was not my decision, and I'm not on some of the others.
I'm barely on it anymore. I mean, I never was really big into social media at all, even like starting Fark.
Right.
I just not something I got too excited about. I have other things going on. I want to be outside. I want to see my friends. Kind of an in-person extrovert. So like the only reason I go on Facebook is I go on there once every day to see if anybody's yelling for me.
Right.
And that's literally it. And I'm really considering maybe not even going on it for that, but that's kind of it.
I mean, I liked it for that second tier of friends, right? Everything from like cousins and in-laws to that kid I went to high school with 30 years ago. And it's I don't want to see what they do every day, but it's fun to be able to say like, to not have all that be a mystery. Because when it was a mystery, it was like, oh man, I had a bunch of kids in grammar school, and I moved, and I've never seen any of them again.
Yeah.
And not like I care all that much. It's more curiosity.
I liked it before it went super algorithmic, because the problem is like it's giving me all the provocative stuff, which does to everybody. Right. The thing that actually floored me was I have a friend of mine who suffers with pretty much like chronic depression, and she was telling me that if you're chronically depressed, which I'm not, but they just gives you more of that.
I'll bet. I'll bet.
You know,
you, you see good things like your friends in Hawaii sipping the Mai Tai and everything looks perfect in their lives. Yeah, and you're like, well, my life's got to suck because I got a toilet that's backed up here. Yeah. And then the ugly stuff, and then you throw in the political food fight. I could see how if you weren't predisposed to being sunny, that thing could make you a lot worse.
Even if you are, it's still trying to knock you off because it's all going for stuff that'll, provoke you. And at the end of the day, that's just going to make you mad and angry. And the other thing I realized was I wasn't remembering anything. I'd go on there for about half an hour. I'd look at some stuff, read some things, I'd come off and be like, what did I just read?
Right.
I can't remember any of it. I mean, and even if I could immediately after the next day, definitely not.
Interesting.
And so I was like, well, I don't need to be doing something that I can't remember any value or even anything above that just makes me mad.
Right.
And so I'm just going to stay off of this and not let them do this to me. So I don't really mess with it that much.
Yeah. I mean, you got to balance that off because it's like, how much do you worry about things? Okay, so let's say you believe a certain political philosophy. Either you believe Trump was an oncoming fascist or you believe wokeism is oncoming fascism with an anti in front of it, right? Mm-hmm. You don't want to, and you could fall into that world and every day you can have that confirmed. Oh my God, the school district, they wrestled the guy to the ground because a transgender raped his kid in the bathroom. All right, well, that kind of happened, right? And so it's not like it's even false. But then But
then that's all you get is the problem. And it seems like it's much bigger.
And then so it's like on one hand, you don't want to see creeping fascism of left or right or whatever that is. And then like, oh, all of a sudden they're putting people in the ovens. Because, I mean, would social media have, that's a good question. Would social media have slowed down Nazi Germany's horrific rule, or would it have increased it? I'm not quite sure.
I don't know.
Right?
Well, we know what happened in Myanmar, so the answer is no.
Well, but they turned all that shit off, didn't they? I mean,
I've never taken a really good hard look at it. It just showed up in the news this week because they just Myanmar dropped a lawsuit on them. Saying they were complicit.
Yeah, so
it's interesting to see how that pans out. I don't know.
Yeah, but you never know. You never know who to root for in that one, right? It's like it's complicit because you shone a light on what I'm doing. But so it's like you don't want to kind of
tell people what I'm doing.
Yeah, so it's like you want to be aware of the big dangers coming towards you, whether that's a political wave or whether it's a literal tsunami wave. But you don't want to get your head into that so much. And we can't. And look, dude, do you know how much money I lost trying to bet against that?
Oh,
when I came out, over $1 million. It was most of my 401k trying to say, what, America wants something better, and that. Yeah.
Well, technically, but we also want healthy meals that taste like McDonald's. And unicorns and puppies, but so like part of the reason why I don't need to do that too is like I get what I would actually otherwise need out of social media by running Fark because I'm reading all of that stuff every day. And
you
so
you get a lot of it then. Right.
Yeah. Well, and not only that, but there's been a weird thing. Like, you remember we were looking at that demographics thing earlier where there's nobody in their 30s, but younger than that, like we don't have any millennials, but we got Zoomers.
Right.
And we got boomers, which could do less of those, but whatever. Anyway, what I think we've had a bunch of people come back recently that have been gone from Fark for a few years. And when they pop back up again, they're like, oh my God, I forgot what it was like to just show up and read the news and not get yelled at or not feel like super angry.
Right.
And I was like, well,
yours has a heavy element of humor throughout it, right?
Right. But what's happened is that so like news is always provocative. Like I've always told my friends that you're talking about like they think that there's bias in the media. And I'm like, well, I mean, there is kind of, but there's actually provocation. And that's what's pissing you off is that they're getting you. And you're going to get that from whatever side of the political spectrum. That's the whole point. They're provoking you to read. It's the headline. It's the extra read all about it.
Right.
Dude in the bathroom. And you're like, oh my God, I'm going to buy that paper. Like that's the business model.
Right.
The problem is that when the algorithm grabs a hold of it, we get used to stuff after a while. Mm-hmm. That whatever the drip is, the serotonin drip, like doesn't work at the same level. So they have to keep ramping up the stuff to the point where like the stuff that I'd still say we're a little provocative, but the Facebook algorithm has gone so far past like anything I would ever like reasonably consider ethical that we look tame in comparison.
Right.
And when people come back to it, they're like, oh man, this is what I've been missing is like a non-needy feed that it doesn't need me to come back. Like we'd like it to, but we're not going to.
But I mean, Facebook isn't pushing stuff in your face that you don't want. So that would,
no, but it is stuff
they're giving you the
need.
Yeah, well, sure. I mean, dessert is something you don't need, right?
Like I said, I get on there and it just makes me mad, and I'm
so you're omitting that then. In other words, look, if you're a buffet, and everybody decides to grab, and what we do is we walk down the news buffet and we grab there's pizza and there's chocolate cake and there's a shake and all, and you do all that, and that's what we like to consume, right? I mean, that shit that explodes isn't because Facebook is pushing something you don't want. It's because they're giving you exactly what you want.
Right. But sometimes, like I said, like
you're dialing that back.
Right. Well, yeah, exactly. Just because like I just don't need that much in my life. And meanwhile, like I've got 3 kids that are teenagers that are kind of fun people.
Right.
And like, at least one of them wants to do something.
No. I mean, you're dialing that back as an editor.
Yes. Yeah. On my end.
In other words, as a Fark producer of news or gateway to news.
Oh, right.
You're keeping some of that shit out there away from them. I'm guessing.
Well, and I'm using humor to do it. So like, for example, like here's a great example of that. So there was an article today that when I saw it, I was like, oh man, that one kind of hurts. It was like 5 kids were killed in Australia when a bouncy castle they were in blew away.
Right.
It wind carried it 30 feet up in the air and then it came down and a bunch of them died. Right. And I'm like, okay, there's no way like I can link this. But then as usually happens, if somebody can give me the compelling headline that makes it a little better, I'll go with it. And
I'm almost afraid to ask.
Well, it was basically, it's like, so they're not kidding. It's true. Literally everything in Australia will kill you. And I'm like, okay, that's it. There it is.
Yeah. It's like, I'm not making fun of it, but there you go. It is kind of a true thing.
Yeah. That's the way to get it through. And it'd be like, oh damn, like it's like the bouncy castle killed him in the context of Australia being dangerous. It's like, okay, we got a hook here. So that's kind of how I do it. I'm not trying to freak people out, but my favorite recently has been the buried lead where it's like on like, way down in the paragraph, the last thing the article says is like, I don't know why that wasn't the headline.
Right.
Great example of that was, because this is a great example of an open-ended joke too, by the way. But so this is actually all true, but it's also a good open-ended joke. So the Pornhub released their end of year top search terms by country, and the top 10, the big headline was for the United States. It was hentai was number 1, and okay, sure, maybe. So but then if you read the article, because I'm always like, is there anything down at the bottom of this that's worth it? And boy, was there ever. So they put the rest of the list up. And it's about what you'd think, except the number 10 on the top 10 was how to. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. They should have led with that. It's like, how to what? It just says how to.
That could be a broad thing. I actually think the porn guys need to step up their game a little bit with their algorithms.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because it's just like, have you ever like, you click off to a couple things and you're like, how did I get to this world here? It's like like there'll be an Asian girl in something and look at that, and then it's like and now it's like everything surrounding me is East. They're all Vietnamese, and it's like, and you can't break your way out of it. You have to just go stop watching porn. Which is
one thing that maybe reminded me of was there's apparently, and I don't know how many other people are doing this, but there's a couple of math teachers that are actually streaming on Pornhub, and they're not doing porn, they're doing math. The idea was that they would reach more people who needed help with math, and they are.
Funny. As a conservative, I was actually thinking of like pushing political content there, being like, all right, literally, if you have people inserting jars into them, maybe you're the kind of company who wouldn't knock me down because I believe X, Y, and Z. You'd actually let me keep here. So
yeah, maybe. It seems like it's a continuum for sure, but yeah,
that'd be funny if Pornhub goes legit and takes over the Facebook world on it.
Yeah, the math teacher's doing great. Apparently, he's got all these people tuning in and people like emailing him asking for math help and stuff. And
well, how do you stumble upon that in? I
saw it in an article.
No. I mean, how do you as a user stumble across the math guy? Right.
Right. Well,
in other words, it's an algorithm. It's YouTube, basically YouTube with naked people. So how do you get to the math?
But this guy's wearing clothes. Yeah, no, I don't know how you get to him, honestly. And here's the kicker is that to kind of take it full circle, like that's the unique thing that Fark is still doing that nobody else is doing, which is in an algorithmic world, you're not going to see anything outside your bubble anymore. And not only are we coming across stuff that we would never see in a million years, but also in a context that you're more easily acceptable to, if that makes sense.
Right.
And so that's kind of what we're doing. And it's one of the few discovery places out there. They don't exist anymore, really. There's no way to find new stuff.
So you know what they need to figure out? They need to figure out when a guy is physically done with the video, and you know what I mean? Right?
They probably already know.
Because I haven't looked into this. Because right after that, I have a feeling 98% of guys shut off. You shut up. They're like, oh, all right, done with that.
Do some algebra.
And now I'm. But normally they're like, oh, I'll go back to Fark now, right? I've done that. But if they were able to figure that out and then boom, hit you in math at that point before you shut it down,
here's Nova.
Might keep you on there.
Here's a Nova on the Big Bang. Like, well, I'm not doing anything else now. Sure.
God, that's so. I always look when I ran big media sites. I always look. It's like, is there a way to somehow capitalize on the porn audience? Because when you look, you talk about cost per CPI and all that. So it's like, look, if you run a business site about investing, you get this as a CPI. If if you are certain news sites do better than others, older people are worth more online because older people love to click shit.
Yeah.
Older people just worth more. It's like they go and click around and do things.
They're not doing anything else.
Younger guys are like, they see that thing, their content, they go. The other person's like, oh, you mean the FDA is upset at this vitamin, and then they click and they buy shit, right?
Yeah.
but the porn world, when I looked at this 15 years ago, it was about 1/10.
Yeah.
Meaning, if you could buy an eyeball for a dime here, you could get it for a penny. Or really, if you could buy it for like a third of a penny, it would be a 30th of a penny down here. And I was always like, if there's a way to get that audience, which is still normal people, right? It's not like there's some weird perverted group that just go do that. I mean, it's more male, it's more young, it's more, we know what it is, but it's a lot of America. And if there was a way to somehow convert that into real or into stuff where then they're like, people aren't afraid to put an ad up, so that then you turn them into the Amazon affiliate links.
Yeah,
never was able to pull that off. I had some strategy session with Breitbart a couple times, figuring out is there a way, because of course you couldn't do it too obviously. You had to do it through you couldn't have people like, I was on Fox News and I went, that wouldn't work out too well.
Yeah,
never figured out. There's $1 billion idea in there somehow though. And maybe
makes me wonder if I should be running ad campaigns on Pornhub now. I'm wondering about this. I might do a sample and see what happens.
Would you have like an ethical or a PR problem with that? I mean, probably not.
I'm always finding out.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I check it out after the fact. That's kind of how I roll.
Yeah.
It's like, maybe, but
you don't run a whole lot of paid ad campaigns anymore, though, do you?
No, zero. Actually, we never did any. So,
but it'd be interesting to test out. Or, look, there becomes a layer if you put the news box there.
Yeah.
Right. That has your clicks to that out there. You might.
Yeah.
Given the percentages there and the money there, and then what you're pulling in on it, you might be able to get guys to hopscotch in, see your thing.
Yeah.
You generally can't, as you know, profit from putting an ad out and having them come to one page. I mean, they have to hang out for 3 or 4 page.
Yeah.
If you do that, I want a free bottle of booze.
Yeah.
But
that's good. I'll help you drink it.
I'd look into it because it's like you look at the ads on porn. I mean, how many dick increasing size pills can they sell? I mean, it's like you look around. They're either selling other porn, which is also free. I guess there's some paid stuff there, and maybe the OnlyFans world is going on big there, but I don't know. There's money to be made there.
Yeah, probably.
And you don't even have to take off your clothes.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. Well, look, I will let you go. I appreciate you doing this. Hopefully this is the very first one that I've recorded. We will see how this comes out, and I sure appreciate it. I was going to say let's talk sometime, but we just did. I think we do it in the afternoon where we drink. This started at 10 a.m. my time, and that's a little bit early.
Oh, yeah,
unless I have some crackers with it too. That it's okay.
Well, and I got our weekly live stream coming up at 4. After that, all bets are off. But
so Fark.com is where people should go, and then what's the weekly thing? I saw it once, but I forget where.
Yeah, it started during COVID. We throw it up on Twitch. We also live stream it straight off of the site. I embedded on the site to get extra viewers on it, basically.
Right.
And, but what it is basically all week. So starting Monday morning, I start running the article queue, and I just start pulling kind of best of candidates out as the week goes.
Right.
And then usually by Thursday or so, that's when I right when we're done, I'm going to go whittle that last list down to about 15. And it'll be like 2 of the things that were the big news, couple of things you might have heard of, and then a bunch of stuff you definitely didn't hear about.
Right.
And going from there.
Very
Yeah.
cool. So it's on Twitch. And what do you search on Twitch if someone?
I think you just look up Fark, but it's twitch.tv/Drew Curtis is what I've got it on. It said /Fark. I've got /Fark too, but
it'll
lazy.
go with that. Okay.
Yeah, but it'll show up, and then I also drop it on my Facebook page too, and I think it goes on Fark's Facebook page. But anyway, it's findable.
Okay.
So it's a good time actually.
You got a way to push some viewers to it, so that's good.
Yeah. All right, sounds good, man.
All right, buddy. Thanks.
Take care. See ya.